All right, so I've decided that I'm going to use this particular image on here, and we'll just kind of follow the same guidelines that we did for the thumbnail sketches, which is to think about, you know, what we liked or didn't like about the positioning of the composition. This is definitely going to be a more challenging type of drawing for some of you, and I do encourage you to, if you've never drawn before, definitely go for something that's very organic and that doesn't have to be exact. This doesn't have to be exact either, so if you just like the idea of it being an object, please go for that too. But know that we haven't talked about really how to draw a thing yet, so that's not what I'm looking for. Accuracy, again, in this drawing is not necessary. So I will choose this drawing and kind of, you know, think about this negative space. Where do I want the top of the light of the object to hit in comparison to the edge? So again, this is thinking about composition, thinking about figure ground, meaning the relationship of the object to its space, or a shape to another shape. That it can be an abstract concept and very often is. So if I'm thinking, I would like this to be around here and this to be around here, I'm gonna just talk a little bit about, even though I just said we don't have to deal with proper proportion, with when you're working with something that has some sort of proportion to it, like a glass or an object or something, a person. There's something called sighting, and we're not gonna actually do it this semester too much, but if anybody's interested in learning about it, please let me know, because it's a great tool. But you probably already do this anyway if you're a drawer, which is to think about the comparison of one shape in size to another. And it's really helpful for kind of getting the idea of how many of something is in something. So, you know, if this ellipse, which is a circle turned on its axis, you're seeing it from not straight on, like you're seeing this, but at an angle. All right, so that makes it an ellipse. And you can kind of think about how many of those fit in through here. So I'm seeing about 3.5 of those ellipses, that shape through here, and that's going to help me to decide how tall this object is. And so if I kind of guess that it might be around here and go 1, 2, 3, and a little bit, then I think I'm in good shape kind of with the length of things around there. And then I can go ahead and kind of guess that. So that's just a really brief, you can do that with the width of things, you know, kind of measuring how wide something is and then noticing the difference here. You can think about building a straight line around an axis to see what that line, that angle might be. And it's stuff that a lot of you might do intuitively if you already draw, but it's a nice tool. So you might notice I'm holding my pencil in this very loose way. I'm using a larger piece of paper than before. Actually, not a larger piece of paper, but I'm using more of the paper. And so for a shape like this, I'm really barely touching the paper, and I'm holding my pencil just very lightly to get the weight of line that I want, which is very light. And also that I'm able to use my arm and my wrist to make these broader lines. So sometimes you want to find the center of something or the axis of something, and that's what I'm doing here. And making a couple of notes about where things might be, where is maybe the center of this object from top to bottom. Okay. So again, you're kind of getting a little bit more in depth. If I were drawing this, I might be thinking about how large is this shape within the rectangle, and thinking about where I might be placing that and how large it might be. where does this shape come on here? And I could do that same measuring with something as abstract as this, and measuring, you know, one shape out to the edge, one shape out to the edge, and that would help you to see how large that would be within your rectangle. All right, so it's not just because this is a cup that you're going to do that. If you want to try that out. And again, some of you might do that intuitively. Some of you might have learned sighting formally, and that's all great. We're all at different stages in this class, different levels. So you go at your own pace. All right. So I've kind of got this blocked in. I'm thinking a little bit about the shapes here. Some of you in an object thing like this, I was talking about with the waves, try not to think about this as water. Try not to think about this as a reflection of this, which is already completely abstracted and complex. Just think about it as tone, shape, angles, you know, let your hand move through it. And this would be a good time to let your hand kind of move through. Once again, once you get things sort of positioned in there, thinking about holding the pencil really gently and moving through and finding some of those wiggly, beautiful shapes that water is making, some of these organic shapes, and finding them through here as a guide. Okay, you know, some of these lovely shapes, and there's a lot of complexity in there. You can get as detailed as you want or keep it as general as you want. All right. My suggestion would be in the beginning to keep it on the larger shapes as best as you can, not get too caught up in here. I could get caught up in here for a really long time. No need, okay? Just keep flowing through it. Paying careful attention. There is a meditation to working with these abstract shapes. The beauty is it's not an eye, it's not a nose, it's, you know, it's a bunch of squiggly lines that have light and darkness attached to them. And so have fun with that and pay attention to where your attention goes with it. If you get bored, close your eyes, take a little break, go take a walk, come back to it. It's definitely an attention required action, right? A different kind of attention than watching a video, a different kind of attention even than reading. You are actively looking and reacting to what you're seeing, and you are also the director. You're not just listening. You're listening and reacting at the same time, if that makes sense. So you're kind of taking this first pass through. Again, I'm still just working with the 2B pencil, because if I get to this stage and I'm like, oh my God, this whole thing, I just want it gone and I want to start again, you can erase the whole thing a little bit more easily than the Sketch and Wash. You can still erase the Sketch and Wash, but this is a little easier. Okay, so you might note I'm not really coming to the edge of this right now because I know I'm going to pull a lot of the tone in with the Sketch and Wash after in that area. But right now I just want to kind of show where things are. Okay. Feel free at any point when you're watching these videos to fast forward. If I could do this more speedily for you, I would. And I don't want to fast forward because if you want to watch it slowly, you can. But do feel free. Okay. And I'm going to now, just for the sake of time, kind of take a look. This is where you might, you know, erase, or if you made some really big proportion things, be like, actually that's sort of more here and this is more here, you know. I want to move this out a little bit more here. If you want to do that, it's not hugely important for any of these subjects that we have to get it just perfect. But if that's your personality and if that's your interest, I respect that as well. So go for it. You know, do what you love and what suits you, and challenge yourself at the same time. Okay, so I could keep going because that's super fun, but you kind of get the idea that you've outlined, you've gone in, you've found some shapes, and now with the sketch and wash, you can go in and start filling in with a little bit of the tone, right? And remember, you can put more in after, so you can go slower. You'll see this is a different type of paper. It has a different kind of texture. You'll feel that when you're doing it, when you're working with this Canson paper. It's going to flow a little bit easier for you when you get the water on there. Okay. Remember to change the direction of your marks in general. We'll be talking about that. But the way you move your hand around a drawing, if you do everything again like this, you're not going to get necessarily the variety that you might want. And also you might slow yourself down. So if I know I've got a bigger area to cover, you know, I want to make sure I'm able to move with a broader stroke than teeny tiny. All right, so try that out. That might not be at all natural to you, but do try that out, even if it's not natural. Because if you do something well already, that's not going to go away. But if you don't try new things, you won't ever improve. And for some of you who I'm sure have drawn before, you want to challenge yourself. Those of you who have never drawn, in some ways you might be lucky because you won't have to unlearn some bad habits. For those of you who have never drawn, try not to be intimidated by those who may come up with work that you're like, whoa, how do they do that? They just did it by working for a long time at it, and that's drawing. So some people are natural. It is true. There are those people who just, it's in their genetics. And, you know, I certainly actually come from a family where there were artists. And so I do think that there is that, just like musicians or good writers or mathematicians, which I am not one and don't come from a family of, great scientists, amazing orators, all the different skills. Sometimes that comes from inheritance, but it's what you do with it. So my brother he could draw really well when we were kids, but he's a musician. He decided to not pursue that. You don't have to. So it's what you decide to do with it. I'm babbling. All right. So now I'm kind of filling in these darker shapes here. I feel like I'm going to go through this entire pencil. And I better check to make sure that the video is still running. Amazingly, it is. All right. So here, when I'm putting in this darker value, I can draw this line to kind of get the basic idea and work toward it in this direction. Okay. And with this broader area, I definitely just want to get this filled in. And this part too. gonna have to sharpen your pencil pretty often for a larger, darker drawing with this stuff because it's soft. Okay. And all right, and knowing that you're able to, my pencil's totally running out. So I actually don't have a pencil sharpener, but with me right now, which is really silly that I'm an artist and I don't have a pencil sharpener in my studio. I do probably somewhere, I just can't find it. I'm using a razor. Don't do this at home unless you know how to do this at home or anywhere. This is how, although they do it much better, the traditional artists would sharpen their pencils is with a razor. And from what I hear, those like ateliers, the schools in Florence in the 1800s and way back, you would just sit and sharpen a pencil for sort of like the first 2 months of drawing class until you learned this art. So we're like ridiculously ahead of them already, is all I'm gonna say. But the nice thing about sharpening your pencil this way is that you can kind of get a bit more of the graphite part of it showing and usable so that you don't have to sharpen as often. Also, if you do end up using this method because you have a razor hanging around and you want to try it, obviously be careful. Do not cut yourself. Always push away from you and kind of go gently as you go toward the tip. But also like for charcoal and certain softer pencils, if you use a pencil sharpener, you might notice that the graphite breaks off in the pencil sharpener. And so this is a way to kind of control that a bit more. So there, I just got a lesson in that. I'm gonna just kind of dump this on the floor and fill some more of this dark in. I want to also mention something that's really bugging me right now, which is that I normally would draw where something is tilted toward me, and I'm drawing on a surface like this for the video where it's like that, it's going away from me, and so I'm getting distortion. This is a much longer thing than this is, and you will too. So if you can, with your object, place it on your pad even. I should be doing this right now rather than, but I feel like it's gonna mess up the video. And put a book under it and draw that way. You'll get a better, or maybe some of you even have a drafting table in architecture, lucky you. So I just wanna mention that the distortion comes from things being, you know, elongated because we're having a distorted view of the perspective right away. Another way to deal with that is to work above it a little bit, and certainly to step back when you can. So I just say that. All right, so I know that I can pick up a lot of this tone out here and use it in here, so I'm not going to go nuts drawing every single thing in here, every shape that I want, because I know that all this tone that I'm putting out here I can pull in. So I do want to make sure I get enough of the graphite going out here to get a nice black, and maybe to be able to push around inside the image a little bit too. Okay, so I could keep going on that. You can keep going on that. You could get all of these shapes just perfect in there if you want to. I think for the sake of moving along, I'm not going to bore you with that. So you can use your wider brush in the beginning if you want to. If there's an area that you feel like you just want to kind of get that all flattened out like that. you can certainly do that and see how that's working for you. If you want to wait to come up to the edge of something, you can, but you certainly don't have to. I'm going to do this just for time's sake. But if you want to move around and see if you can get different kind of texture and feeling in the dark areas, you can use your smaller brush. You could decide to leave some areas with graphite only. Let that be up to you. But you'll notice that this paper is handling the water in a much kinder way than the Strathmore. I mean the sketch pad that you have. All right. So I'm going to just switch over here a little bit, and you want to make sure you have your paper towel so that if you want to get the brush kind of cleaned off, you can. And white areas, if any of you have done watercolor or ink, you know that you want to try your hardest to save the white areas from too much tone until the end. Again, whatever, if it all gets too dark, it just does. But the idea is to work around the light as much as you can. Okay. And so now it's just kind of fun, and it's back to that meditative quality of pulling through, getting the ink quality of the graphite, the flow of it. Again, you can be as detailed as you want to be, or as loose as you feel in this drawing. Okay. And notice how, once again, the brush feels different, the water feels different. The water lends itself. If the more water you add, you might get some nice sort of flow over. I didn't erase the pencil underneath, so you're going to still get those little marks under there of shape of light and shadow. That's fine with me. I like it. If you don't like it, you don't have to, you can erase those lines before you put the wash on. And these brushes are pretty amazing with the tininess you can get, the rounds of the polar flow. And I think you have a smaller round, so if you want to use that for the teeny tiny, you can do that too. I'm mostly just sticking with this brush that I have. And again, feel free to fast forward. I tend to be somebody who's not always so patient with ink or with this type of thing, and so I won't get it just, I won't always leave all of my lights and everything, but I do recommend you do that, is be cautious as you move toward the lighter areas. Rinse your brush quite a bit if you want to preserve them, because they won't erase out very well or at all. I wish they could with this stuff. That would be kind of amazing. And maybe there are some that do that, but this one I notice does not. So again, if you want to pick up a little bit of, more dark, you can pull it from another area. Another thing to talk about is that we are working right now from a photograph that another artist took, and that in general, this would not be something that I would want to hang up in a gallery or anything like that, because it's not really my work. It's somebody else's vision. Somebody lit this photograph, somebody took it, and also because eventually you want to just work with images that you create. So you take your own photograph if you're going to work from a photograph or work from life. Sometimes you might need references from a stock photo or Google to see how a hand works, or light goes on a field or something like that. But in general, we want to try to own our own imagery. And that's not just like a moral issue. It's just more about creating all of the aspects of your work and thinking about the particulars of what you're doing that is specific to what you're trying to do, right? So I say that about ownership of imagery, but also about the ways that we create our own imagery. Another thing is that because we're working with a photograph as opposed to from life, there is an advantage in the flattening of an object as opposed to an object in 3D, and that the light source stays the same. So when you're working from life, you're going to see things changing in terms of your light source, and you're also going to be distracted by the three-dimensionality of it in space. And so that's something to notice the difference of when you're working from life and when you're working from a photograph, and why working from a photograph is generally a little bit easier. It's because it has been flattened into a two-dimensional plane, which is what we're working with. Okay. So, because I was sitting, I'm noticing some of the distortions that I'm trying to kind of subtly fix because I can't help it. But again, yours may end up being far looser and not concerned with ellipses and angles and things like that. That is my hope for you in some ways. So I can continue to fill this in, but I just want you to know you can keep some of the tone if you like it from the pencil. So if you like the variety together, you can choose to keep that, or you can smooth every bit of that tone into the watery based. And areas where I can, broader areas where I can let the water kind of flow into each other, I will do that. And I feel like I want more darkness over there, but I may have to wait until it dries to be able to add more to that. All right, so you can wait until it dries thoroughly before you try and draw on top of it with more of the ink. More of the graphite. Okay. It's so fun. When you get to the lights, to saying how light is that light, be sure that you know that you can kind of change your water and get pure, clean water and wipe this down and even just have the slightest bit of tone where you want it. Like this looks like a pure white, but I want it to be just slightly toned. So I'm kind of using the dirty water. I'm just slowly pushing into it because I kind of feel like that white is too white, the white of the paper for that. And so that's being aware of tonal value and thinking about that there are always values between each of the values that you see, and that you can utilize that if you want to. Try to keep your eye moving around the whole thing, kind of looking at how do these values plug in together from darkest to middle to light, middle light to lightest light. You have to look at the whole thing to be able to judge that, and that's a really important part of painting and drawing in all different and actually all kinds of fields, right? The big picture, trying to see things in context to one another. Very important. So I'm already seeing up here like there's a chunk of white that's missing, whatever, but I can try to kind of blot that out, so that works a bit if you get it while it's wet. And if you try and wet another area to take out and kind of blot into it, that can work. I'm seeing that this is a little further over than I would like it to be, and that I think this tone's going to be too dark to pull over there. So I'm going to try and just push that in there and soften it a little bit, right? Push that over and soften it. So again, we can get a little crazy with this, but that's just thinking about the material and what it can do. All right. This is not a material that I use very often, to be honest. I teach it to you guys, or I want you to use it because I think it's a nice introduction to when we get to ink, that you're not too freaked out by it. It's a way to push through graphite and when we have to get going quicker, and to bring it into tonal value as a subject as well. So we're on the speed train, you guys. Any one of these materials you could just spend a lifetime really working with. So this is pretty dry. I'm just going to go ahead and see if I can pull some more of this value in. It feels different to draw over the top of what had water on it. So I'm just noticing that. And I'm pulling a slight bit darker tone onto it. All right, so I'm gonna maybe keep working on this, maybe I won't, but I gotta get on to this lesson with you. And I'll let you begin your drawing and see how that goes. At the end of your drawing, go ahead and peel off, and when you take a photograph of it, peel off the tape and you'll get a nice border all the way around. And you can take a picture of it and send it to me that way. All right, my friends, good luck. Choose a subject that's appropriate to you and your likes and dislikes, and also your skill level. So you're going to want to do 3 thumbnail sketches and your final drawing. It's a lot more than last week, but you can do it. Try and break it out into small groups and use your class time on Monday for sure. Check in with me, however you want to do that. All right, folks, I hope this wasn't too long and boring. Speed through it. All right, talk to you later. Bye.